Before we jump into some demos on using the arc and the arc2 functions, I'm going to take a step back and review two of the specific parameters that the arc function takes because it's important to understand how these work. So I mentioned earlier that the arc function actually takes an x and y, and that'll represent the center point of where the circle starts drawing. It takes a radius, and then it also takes a start, an end angle, and then something called anti-clockwise, which we'll get to in a moment. But I'm going to focus on the start and the end angles. If I want to draw a complete circle, I need to know the angle to start at and to end at, of course. And the way it works is a complete circle would have a start angle of 0. We'd go all the way around, and 2 times pi represents a complete circle if we put 2 times pi as the end angle. Now, of course, if we wanted something like a 90-degree chunk right here, then I would do 0 as the start and 0.5 times pi as the end, and that would draw this chunk here, and all this over here would just be left as white. If I want to do a half circle, I'd say 0 for the start angle, and then 1 times pi for the end. And then, of course, we could do something in between where I draw all the way up to the top right here, but then there's just a cutoff right there. That would all be white, and that'd be 0 and 1.5 times pi. So now that you've seen that, I'm going to jump into some demos, and it'll hopefully make a little more sense as I do some of these different angles and explain how they work. Now that you've seen how the start and the end angles work, let's go ahead and put the arc function into action. I'll show you how to draw some circles and other types of shapes. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's change our fill style from green, which we have up here for the bar chart we did in a previous demo, to red. And then I'm going to come in and do the arc. So we're going to give it an x of 100. Let's go down 100 on the y, the radius of about 30. The smaller the number, the smaller the radius or size of the circle, of course. If I did something like 500, that would be huge. So we're going to do about 30. And then the start and the end angle. So I'm going to say start at 0, and we want to go all the way around. So I'm going to do 2 times math.pi. And as I just showed, that'll start on the right side of the circle and go all the way back around to the right. And then we want to go clockwise. So for anti-clockwise, I'm going to say false. Now, if I run this as is, you won't be too impressed because we didn't actually fill it. We told it to do an arc, but it's much like the rect function that I demoed earlier in a previous demonstration in this section, where if you don't fill it or stroke it, you don't see anything. So we need to fill it. So we simply say context.fill, and that'll now fill the arc, and if we run it, we should now see a red circle here. So there we go. Now we could also come in, and instead of doing a fill, we could do a stroke. And right now the stroke style isn't really set, so we could say context.stroke style, and let's just say black. And if we do a stroke now, it'll just do the outer border of this, and you'll notice it doesn't fill it though. Of course, we could combine those. We could do context.fill and do a stroke on it, and now we'll get our red circle with kind of a black border there. And I'm actually going to change that to white because in the demos coming up, what I'd like to do is basically put data points on the top of each of these bars and have this white kind of blend in here. So that's how you can do it, just a basic circle. Now, if we want to do maybe a half circle, we could do 0 as the starting angle, and as I showed, 1 would be 180 degrees. So if we run this, we should get a half circle. Now, if we want to flip that and have it start here and go over, basically we do anti-clockwise, and that would go this way. So we'll set this to true. And now you'll notice we get the top type shape. And of course, if I wanted to do something, let's set this back to false like normal, 0 to 0.5, that would give us kind of a 90-degree angle. So let's run that, and we'll see that we just have that little slice here that it fills. So that's an example of different types of shapes and how you can use the different start and end angles with the arc, but it's not exactly useful to just draw some random circles. So what I'm going to do is inside of the loop here, I'd like to go ahead and at the top of our bars that render, we want to go ahead here and add some circles to represent the middle of the data points on this particular graph. So to do that, We already have our height, we have our fill rec, and all of that good information. I'm going to come down and leave that. And what I'd like to do though is we want to come in and we need to set a Y here. I don't want to calculate this again for my arc position. So we're going to come in and say Y equals that. And I'm going to put a Y right there. Now the reason I'm doing that is I'm going to use it again in just a moment here. So let's come on down and I'm going to do a fill style of navy. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my arc. So what I'd like to do is take the current X, which is going to be the left side of where the rectangle draws, but I want to get the width, which is 50, and that'd be the current X all the way over to 50, and I want to divide that by 2. So we're going to say current X plus the width divided by 2, and that'll basically position the radius of the circle, or the center point I should say of the circle, right at the middle of each individual bar. I'm going to use Y, and then we're going to come in and do our radius. Now I'm going to do a pretty small one here, and we'll do something like 15, and I want a complete circle. So we'll do 0, and then we want to go all the way around for a circle, so we know that we have to do math.pi. And I could do true or false here. It doesn't really matter because it goes all the way around. Now from here we can go ahead and fill it, and then if I'd like to do a stroke around it, we can set our stroke style, and I'm going to do white for this stroke style. And I want the line to be a little bit thicker, so I can do that by setting a property called line width. Alright, now I'm ready to go, so I can say stroke, and we can go ahead and try this out. So there we go. We're going to go ahead and set the fill from green to navy. Now what's going to happen though is it'll stay navy if I leave it like this. So I'm going to come in and move the fill style inside of the loop to make sure that the bars stay green, so that we basically change our brush every time we loop to green, we fill the rec, then we're going to go ahead and do a fill style of navy, and then we'll do our arc and our stroke here. So let's go ahead and run it and see what we get at this point. And you'll notice it worked, but we kind of have this weird line going through, which in a way is kind of cool, I guess, but not exactly what I was looking for. What I need to do is, when I set my fill style here, I need to tell the context to begin a path. And what that'll do is once we call stroke down here, it's going to basically end the path, and then it will stop drawing, and then when it loops back, it won't mix that line in that you saw with the rectangles. So let's run it again. So now we have a nice little bar chart with some data points on it, and those may be a little big, but what's nice about this is I can come in and comment this out, and if we just wanted to get some data points, there we have it. Now a little later we're going to see how we can connect these with lines, and we'll draw those lines pretty easily. But that'll conclude our example of coming in and using the arc along with the start and the end angles to render circles, or I showed how you can render other types of shapes.